Hello, this is Bible Academy for Children. I'm Pastor Teacher Curtis Somo, and today we continue our study in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 20. Now, before we continue, let's make sure that we have confessed our known sins and are allowing the Spirit of God, who indwells us, to control us by giving ourselves over to Him. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this opportunity and the privilege, the time, everything you've given us so we can study your word. We ask that our hearts and our minds be open and ready to receive it. In Jesus' name, amen. We've been studying about a fool the last several verses. This verse 1 of chapter 20 closes the section about fools and their punishment. This one does not handle alcohol well. Now, what I mean by that? Well, you know, there are drinks, certain drinks like wine and beer, and then they call some things hard liquor, vodka, and, they'll have these drinks in these bars and things like that that have alcohol in them. And that alcohol affects the mind and loosens it up, you might say, so one doesn't think clearly. If they drink too much, they can stagger and they get drunk. In other words, there's a point where if you drink too much alcoholic beverages, whether it be beer or wine or the hard liquor, one can get drunk. Or another term for that is intoxicated. When a person's intoxicated, he loses the finer controls of his mind, his thinking, sometimes even his thinking or hearing. And he loses his self-control as well. Some people like to do that. There's all kinds of names for being drunk. Some say stoned or swacked, or they're at a point where they stagger, they get loud. Some are just real quiet. It just depends. Alcohol has different effects on different people. Well, we're going to learn about that a little bit today and the dangers of that, the dangers of drunkenness. With verse 1 is our first verse. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is intoxicated by it is not wise. Here the old sage writes as if wine and strong drink is actually a person. We call that personification. It's a figure of speech method to teach something. It begins with wine. Some wine, a lot of wine, has alcohol in it. The kind of wine people have around their table. The kind of wine that you buy in stores and grocery stores and liquor stores. Strong drinks are stronger than that. Sometimes it's beer. Beer has more alcohol in it, and too much of that can cause intoxication as well. Now, it says wine is a mocker. In other words, it causes a person to mock people, to scorn. It can be against people, against things, against, if they're drunk enough, they may complain about stoplights. It gets silly. A brawler, of course, is someone who, he's loud. He likes to start trouble. The word actually means growl or roar. And these are those noisy drunks. They're banging things around. They're yelling. They're that don't make any sense. And you stay out of their way as they kind of fall towards you. But it's associated with people who are boisterous, bad behavior. So we have wine and strong drink here, figurative for person. Then the final point here on this verse, and whoever is intoxicated, that's drunk. The root word means to go astray, to err. By it is not wise. That's obvious. All these descriptions are of someone who has had too much to drink and is intoxicated or drunk. He's lost control of himself to some degree. He's not clear-headed. as he usually is. It's always associated with wrongful behavior, sinful behavior. Think of it. He's a mocker, he's a scoffer, he's a brawler, he's unwise. And that's just in this one proverb. So why would anybody want to do this? Well, people often get drunk to get their minds off of their problems, get their minds off of something. You know, they've lost a girlfriend, they lost their job, they're just basically unhappy, they're miserable at their work, whatever it is. And they drink to lose control and just think about something else. And it's really a silly way to do things, but many people actually do it. In fact, some do it almost every weekend. But this is the way the world often copes with its problems, deals with its problems. They want to forget it. They want to quit thinking about it. Or they want to let loose of their mind and just do something crazy. They call it fun sometimes. The Bible says it is not wise. Now, as Christians, as believers, we have biblical solutions to these type of problems in life. If we've suffered loss, or we don't want to think about something bad, we can turn and think about God, think about the Word of God, think about our future with the Lord. We can get into the Word. We can read the Proverbs. Obedience is a solution when you got a life full of problems. Obey the Lord. He'll take care of you. But let me make this clear, because it sounds like drinking is totally stupid. No, because I want to teach you exactly what the Bible says. But let me say this first. There's a reason they don't let children drink, because it takes responsibility. Like if you drive a car or handle firearms or do something dangerous, don't drink because you have to have a clear head. You don't want an airplane pilot flying a plane that hasn't got all his mind there, right? Now, for adults, though, when they drink, the Bible does not forbid drinking, but it forbids drunkenness. One can drink a little wine or a little beer and maybe even some strong drink, but not very much strong drink, because one or two strong drinks can start to get you drunk. Just depends on the strength of the drink. But let me just make it clear, some wine can be watered down, as they sometimes did in the ancient world, to where there was little alcohol in it. So you might have 2 or 3 glasses at dinner and not get drunk. And wine was a regular drink at the dinner table at times. They didn't have the best water in those days, and some of them still don't. And the Bible does associate drinking with a number of things. Merriment, Ecclesiastes 10:19, but also anger, Isaiah 5:11. Sometimes shame, it brings shame, Genesis 9:21. One drinks at the wrong time, the wrong company, get himself in trouble. Well, in the hands of Melchizedek, the priest, it was used to honor Abraham. So sometimes it was used by believers. And it often was at the festivals and celebrations of ancient Israel. Sometimes they were used in offerings and sacrifices. Genesis 27:28. Exodus 29:40, Deuteronomy 14:26. And I give you these verses. You look them up if you want, but the point is there's plenty of scripture to support these principles. But understand, drunkenness, intoxication is always wrong. Well, in the Old Testament, under the Old Covenant, it was wrong. Under the Mosaic covenant, it was wrong. For believers, it's always wrong. It's not wise at all for people in society who aren't even believers, because it can be dangerous. There are many dangers to being intoxicated, loss of good behavior. All kinds of sin can come out of it. People can lie and cheat and maybe even go in and steal something out of a store because they're not thinking clearly. You see, once one loses control, it becomes difficult to resist all kinds of temptations. So this proverb is a warning of the extremes of getting drunk and intoxicated. This is where wine can lead, strong drink can lead to these things. If this is what you're characterized as someone says, he's a drunk, or he's a brawling drunk, then that person has some problems. You don't ever want to allow yourself to get drunk. Now, for young people, they should stay away from drinking. And as you get older, you got to be very responsible, and I use the word careful with it. Be very careful with it. For some people, it's best to not drink at all because they have a weakness. It's one of their weaknesses, and they easily get drunk, and then they don't act like themselves. So I want to keep you honest. I give you an honest evaluation of this. It's always wrong to get drunk. And when you become an adult, and if you drink, you've got to be very careful. Don't get drunk. You might learn how much you can take. You might have 1 beer, 2 beers. If you start to feel funny, stop. Stop. And next time, don't take that second one, you see. Well, from here we move to the righteous king and fools in verses 2 through 11. And this section begins with a threatening judgment from the king. Verse 2, the king will get rid of evil in his kingdom. This is a righteous king. But listen to the approach, verse 2. The roaring as of a lion is like the terror of the king. Whoever angers him is one who forfeits his life. I don't know if you've ever heard a lion roar. If you go to the zoo, you often hear them growl. They just kind of have a loud grunt. But when they roar, it is something else. I watched Narnia with the family the other day, and the lion in there, Anselm, I think's his name, he roared, and it is loud and it is scary. And my understanding is that's a sign that they have claimed their prey. And when you hear that, you better run, or whatever you can do. Get out of there. All right? Well, that's compared to a king who's angry, who is going into a rage of terror of the people. And that's what this picture is. A king has tremendous power. Now, we've seen this before, even recently in the Proverbs. The point here is, if you anger him and you're within his vicinity where he can reach you, you may just end up losing your life. Now, this wouldn't be the best king that would do that just at the drop of a hat like that, but the point is, there's power behind the throne. And when you terrify a king, when a king is angry, he's like a roaring lion. He's looking for someone to take his anger out on. And it's described for both the lion and the angry king. You forfeit your life. Well, you get a king or a lion upset with you, and they're within range. Well, it's kind of like committing suicide. You've just committed suicide. You've set yourself up to be killed. So that's just a point of wisdom. Be careful about angry kings. You don't know what they'll do. Now, many of us don't have kings over them, but we do have other people over us, like our parents, maybe school teachers. You don't want your teacher mad at you, or your parent mad at you. Not that they would threaten your life at all, but still, you've learned you don't want to do that. Maybe not even a brother or sister or friend. 2 points about power you should learn. The sooner you learn these in life, good for you. Power in the hands of the unjust is tyranny. This is like saying when you have someone who's a ruler and he's not fair, he becomes a tyrant. He doesn't act in justice. or fairness, then he just dictates things. He's not even thinking about what's right or what's fair. Another principle, justice without power is weak. If you give someone the power of justice like a police officer, and he doesn't have the power to arrest or sometimes the power to use force, then what good is he? You see, he's very weak. If you ever had a job, you grow up and you have a job and you have a position of authority, or at least they say you do, over a group of people, but there's no power behind that authority, they're not afraid of you and they won't do what you're supposed to do. They're supposed to do. Not necessarily they should be afraid, but one of the reasons people obey the boss is because the boss can fire them, you see. But if they're told the boss, well, he can't do anything to you, why would they listen to him? Some people are like that. Now, good Christian believers will just obey because they're supposed to. But some need that little bit of a threat that comes with authority. And you take that threatening authority away from them, then they're going to be very weak leaders. That's just a principle I want you to see. Verse 3. Abstaining from strife brings honor to a man, but any fool will quarrel. Abstaining means to not do something, to avoid something. We use the word shun, get away from it, refrain. This is the wisest move in most cases. Avoid getting into a fight or argument. At the first sign of trouble, find a way to stop it. Now, that can bring honor to a person. You've done the right thing. You didn't start a fight. Even if you had a rightful reason to fight, there are times it's best not to fight. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Let's look at the contrast. But any fool will quarrel. A fool can quarrel at anything, at any time, over just about anything. I didn't like what you said. I don't like the way you look. I don't like what you did. You see, they can start a fight at any time, so they're out to do that. That's foolish. The word here for quarrel here means to break out. They're ready just to bust out in a fight any time. Now let's talk about what this means, because there's more here than what's just on the surface. We started out earlier with the drunken fool, what he can do. We saw what a king can do. Now we see a wise person. It could be that king controlling a situation so there's not a fight. But if it's a foolish king, he may just fight over anything, you see. But a wise king, he will avoid a conflict if he can. It's too costly. So, let's keep our verse up here while we talk about this. Sometimes defending one's honor, as I use the term, you shouldn't have said that about me or my family or my wife or anything, all right, that you think you need to defend, that can bring strife. Well, you have to weigh whether it's the right thing to do. But sometimes ignoring the insult or not having the last word in or the cleverest insult can bring honor. I still do. I watch old westerns sometime, and people always like to pick on the fastest gun. Well, sometimes the fastest gun, he knows he's so much faster. He don't want to draw on this guy, because if he did, he'd just shoot him. So he walks away. Or he doesn't show up to the fight with the gun. You don't shoot people without guns. That was considered murder. Now, these are westerns or cowboys, and there's a lot of fantasy there. But the point is, sometimes it's best to restrain from fighting or insulting people back. Insulting is often a sin, so you got to be careful with that. So one of the things we've learned, and I hope you've picked up on this, when you have a lot of power, when you have a lot of strength, like you're a king or someone who's really strong, and you don't use that power, that takes a lot of character sometime. You could wipe them away in a second, but you don't, because it's not a fight that should be done. It's not a fight worth winning. It's not important enough to fight over, so you don't do it. How many times do we get in arguments over silly things? You see what I mean? Over silly things. With a brother or sister or even with our parents. Just do what they say. Get it over with. And the time you get it over with, or the time it takes to do it, is shorter than the argument sometimes. So you just do it. Go take out the trash. Oh, I don't want to take out the trash. And you whine, take out the trash. Well, you could already taken it out by now. See, and it'll be over with. Well, learn from this. Sometimes it's best not to fight. And it brings honor. You become an adult and you get into situations where there's a lot more at stake, like not just a family, but maybe a business. Sometimes it's best just to back away. Let the other person show what he's made of. But then again, the contrast, a fool can explode at any moment. And you got to watch out for him. There's a lesson there. You see, the wise are more concerned about keeping the peace than coming out on top. Or sometimes even being shown that he's the one that's right. But you say, yeah, but aren't you always supposed to be right? Yes, you're supposed to be right. But starting a fight isn't always the best thing to do, even though you're right. And that what you did was right, and they want to start a fight over it, don't start the fight. You know you're right. Leave it at that. You know, in war, generals sometimes have to pull back the troops, what they call retreat, in a battle, in order to maybe send those troops in another direction, and then they win the war. Now, the point is, sometimes it's better to retreat during a battle, and you can still win the war. Don't be one of those fly-off-the-handle hotheads ready to start a fight at the drop of a hat, where any excuse will do. The wise person, if he must fight, will carefully select his battles and abstains from them when he can. Verse 4, we go back to that sluggard. Do you remember him? The lazy, slow person, unbelievably lazy. The sluggard does not plow after the autumn, so at harvest time he asks for grain, but he has nothing. Now let's pick this apart for what it actually means. After autumn was a time when they planted their seed. So you know the plant is seeded. They put it in the ground. It takes a growing season where there's water and sunshine, and then it comes up, and then they harvest it, and then they seed again. Well, when it says after the autumn, this is the time to seed. It's right before winter starts, so they can get the seed in the ground, get it watered, get it germinating under the ground. Then here comes the rains, and then later there may be some snow, but the seed's underneath the ground now. Well, this person didn't seed when he was supposed to. He didn't plant the seeds when he was supposed to. So what happens, at harvest time, nothing came up. You're saying, well, what'd you expect if you don't plant it? Exactly. But this is saying a person who doesn't do what he's supposed to do when he's supposed to do it, he's not going to get any produce, any product, any result. So what's he do? He has to go around asking for grain. He doesn't have any grain. Doesn't have grain to feed his stock or make bread, and he becomes a beggar. Why? Because he didn't do what he's supposed to do at the time it was to do it. Why? He was too lazy. He was too lazy. Simple principle. When you have the opportunity to produce, do what it takes or you'll end up with nothing. Do what it takes, you'll end up with nothing. By the way, this is part of God's moral order as well. Well, it's connected to the laws, his laws of nature, if you want to call them that. There's a time to plant, a time to seed, there's a time to harvest. And so you do it at the right time. And if you neglect doing it at the right time, there'll be no harvest. We also have another name for this. It's called the Law of Reciprocity. Reciprocity. I'll show you that word. Reciprocity, the Law of Reciprocity. Can you see it up there? The Law of Reciprocity. There are certain principles that God has set in place for the human race. They're tied in with nature. If you don't plant when you're supposed to plant, you don't get anything back. Now, there are those who don't like to work, and yet they want money. So they beg. And if they get the right to vote, what do you think they'd vote for? They'd probably vote for less work and more money. Now, where does that money come from? From someone else who worked. From someone else who worked. Is that fair? No. But if that person who worked wants to give it to them, fine. That's their choice. That's even virtuous to give to the poor, right? But if he didn't want to work, that's another thing. Why should you work for someone else? Okay? Now, learn to do what you're supposed to do when it's time to do it. There are some who don't do that, and they claim to be victims. That's a big thing today in the United States. People want to claim to be victims of this or that. Well, I'm just a victim of bad society. Really? When's the last time you worked? Well, we'll see what I'm saying. There are jobs all over the place in the United States. Some are as well paying as others. Some take some training. And if people choose not to train or go to school, they're not going to get the better jobs. Rarely do they get a good job. But it's often just labor, physical work. They may not make a lot of money, and they're very tired, but they work hard, and that's fine. At least they're working. But don't claim to be a victim for what you don't want to do when everyone else is doing it, you see? Verse 5. We've had something like this one before. A plan in the heart of a man is like deep water, but a man of understanding draws it out. This tells us about people who have plans that don't tell others what they are. They're like in deep water, and no one can get to them. They're like a deep, dark secret, you see. So this man has something he's going to do. He has a plan, but no one knows what it is, and often it's up to something no good. So this first line describes his motives and reasons. No one seems to understand why he's going to do what he's going to do or what he is going to do. It's a deep, dark secret. It's an unrevealed plan. Keeps them hidden. But notice what happens. But a man of understanding draws it out. It's like a man who has understanding can reach down in that deep water and pull out and say, oh, here's what he's going to do. So the man of understanding has discernment. He's skilled in figuring things out. So how would he know? How would a man of discernment know these deep, dark plans? Well, let me give you some big clues. He knows what type of person this is. If he's shown himself to do certain things in the past, he has a certain type of behavior, then the man of understanding said, well, I can tell you one thing about that guy. It's not going to be good what his plans are because he doesn't do good. He's criminal type. So you're thinking, uh-oh, you better watch out. So everybody gets warned, you see, because this man of understanding knows the type of person. He knows his record. He knows what the circumstances are. And he says, last time this happened, here's what he did. So he knows his plans. And the guy goes, uh-oh, there's that guy that knows me. So he'll avoid being seen by that guy that knows him, you see. But this tells us a couple of things. People who hide their plans are usually up to something. Watch out for them. But if you have discernment, these are the type of people you want around you, or you want to be, so you won't be fooled by that person. And these people are often schemers, and they're deceptive, and they don't reveal what they really want to do. And many people can't figure them out. They don't know what to expect. If you're a police officer and you're walking the streets and you see a parked car out in front of a bank and the engine's running, the guy's sitting in it, like he's getting ready to take off, something's probably going on inside that bank. And then you recognize the guy. You say, oh, that guy, he's a criminal. So you call it in right quick and you try to stop the robbery, you see. Simple principles. Let me put some up here for us. Think about these things. Now, this is not just this verse, but other verses related to a fool. Do not expect a hostile fool, this is one who gets violent, to do anything good except for his own kind, and sometimes not even them. Don't expect a hostile fool to do anything good for you. Another one, people who do not reveal their plans are often up to doing something harmful. Next one, the naive, that's the gullible. The fools follow right along. They'll go right along with it. They'll even follow a violent boss because they think the benefits outweigh his violence. Getting all that money out of the bank robbers. Fools follow right along. Next one's related to this. Do not expect pure motives from a proven fool. Don't expect a person who's always been a fool to be honest, or tell you the whole story, or be even true on a witness stand. They're known for lying, you see. And the last one's a reminder of a proverb we had a while back. Remember the father who had to keep bailing out his rebellious son over and over because he didn't tell his son what he needed to do and discipline him? So he keeps bailing him out. He never lets his son learn, and his son just goes deeper and deeper. Even to adulthood, he keeps getting in trouble. And his father still comes in and bails him out. Foolish people often repeat the same mistakes. Maybe in a different way, maybe in a different setting, but they're still basing their decision upon foolish thinking, selfish motives, that type of thing. Verse 6 talks about loyalty. Some people are loyal, some people are not. Verse 6, many a man professes his own loyalty, but who can find a trustworthy man? Now this is a very simple but practical proverb. That means it has a lot of application. Notice the first line, many a man professes his loyalty. That is a way of saying they claim to be loyal. They'll tell you they're loyal. They'll tell others they're loyal. It might be to a person, to a cause, to a country, to a group, to a team. But this is just professing. It doesn't mean they really are. They just claim it. He may profess loyalty just to get along with the group, to not look bad, to maybe not show what he really thinks. In contrast, but who can find a trustworthy man? Now this is a way of saying, but when who can find, it's a way of saying they're rare. They're rare. Who can truly find someone who's really loyal? Loyal friends are rare. True, patriots are rare. If you live in a good country, one that follows God's moral order, and there are many countries who do that generally, because if it doesn't, then that country has some real problems. And many people have learned if you don't have a certain amount of law and order, you don't get along with each other, especially at a country level. Some people, when a little pressure comes on them, they're not really very loyal. If you know much about the future and the mark of the beast will testify one's loyalty to Christ. And our first loyalty is always to Christ. Now, for those who live in the United States, if you go back and you look at the true history of the United States, and I mean the real history, not the lack of history or wrong history that so many teach today in the schools and even colleges, the United States has followed God's moral order like few countries in history. Now, if you can get through all the junk history, stuff that's been covered up by public education, I would not trust public education for history or philosophy. A lot of those teachings today where that requires anything other than something technical like math or maybe some science, but even then you've got people teaching evolution as fact. All I'm saying is that when you get through all the stuff that's false history and get to the true history, you'll find that there was a moral order in the Constitution of the United States. Now, it's not that everybody followed it perfectly, but that was the law. That was what you might say the high standard. And if we could get to that standard, then everyone would be better off. And many people suffered because we didn't get to that standard quick enough. Well, when I say that, what I mean is there are times in history when some people didn't honor the Constitution, what it truly meant, and that caused problems. It causes struggles and wars and strife. The point is, loyalty is important, and it's rare. If you have a good family, you need to be loyal to your family, your brothers and sisters, and your parents. Good church, be loyal to your church, to your pastor. If he's a good pastor, believe me, he'll be under attack. If you have a good friend, be loyal to him. Stick up with them. You know they're right, stay with them. Even if they're wrong, sometimes it's good to support them. I tell people, if I ever get thrown in jail for preaching the gospel, see if you can bring me some cookies. You see? Maybe my reading glasses. Well, there's plenty of fools to go around. Most people do not control their sin nature well. But remember, the moral order helps put a restraint on the worst behavior because it penalizes things like lying, cheating, stealing, murder, false witness, things like that. That's part of God's moral order for us to get along as a human race. And the better a country honors those things, the better that country will be. And if your country does that, honor your country. Honor your country. Many people died to keep your country free. And if you live in one of those countries, then you need to honor the flag. Always honor the flag. When a country does not have moral order respected, then that country's on its way out. And by that I mean they're in for discipline. Let's look at our proverb again. Many a man professes his own loyalty, but who can find a trustworthy man? People's loyalty is sometimes very shallow. They act like they're loyal to a group. They take a pledge or they stand up with others and say, yes, we believe that, but really they don't when it comes down to it. And remember this, God's moral order is always under attack. People do not want righteousness and justice and fairness. So there's always an assault on that. And the worst kind of assault is to destroy the system that provided justice and not go after those who acted unjustly. That's just silly. You go after the wrongdoers. Don't blame the system. Popular saying today. Go after the wrongdoers. Don't blame the system. And by the way, once they start blaming the system and start shutting down what people say in the name of blaming the system, well, if you people are just going to talk like that, well, we're not going to be able to talk at all. Really? In the United States, we have freedom of speech. Yes, we do. And if they shut down freedom of speech, it won't be long before they're shutting down giving the gospel to people, teaching the Word of God. Now, verse 7 brings us back to a basic principle of getting a person, a family, a group, or nation back in line with God's moral order. Here's where it begins. Listen to this. Verse 7, a righteous man who walks in integrity. Blessed are his children after him. Now this is kind of an awkward sentence, but it's actually making two statements. A righteous man who walks in integrity. You find a righteous man and he'll walk in integrity. Now, righteous means he follows God's moral order. As a Christian, he's obedient. And he walks, that means he lives his life, everyday life, in integrity. He's honest before God. He's honest before people. He does the right thing. And his children, blessed are his children after him. His children who he raises, and since he's righteous, he'll raise them right. If his children respond to the discipline and training and wisdom of that parent, they are blessed. And even if they don't follow what their parent did, they're still blessed because that's their father. He gave them a standard. If they're silly enough not to follow that standard, then they'll realize how bad they can make it for themselves. But if they have a righteous father, or righteous parents here, we could say, that child is in an excellent position to be blessed. And blessing means to be happy, to be satisfied with life. You have a good parent or good parents. They live an honest and honorable life. Their lifestyle is blameless. You're going to appreciate that as you get older, because many kids don't have that. They don't have it at all. And parents have an effect on their children. They influence their children. They show them the best way. Now, as a child gets older, he may decide, I don't want to do that. So they go out and make a stupid mistake. And they go back and go, oops, I should have done what my parents told me. There's a lot of advantages having righteous parents, both parents at home, to raise you. If you have that and they're righteous, you are blessed. You are blessed. What about the king? Well, let's talk about the king. Verse 8, a king who sits on the throne of judgment sorts out all evil with his eyes. Now, let's talk about this king. First of all, it said that he sits on a throne of judgment. He has the power to judge. He can judge law cases, what they call civil cases, criminal cases. He can make judgments for his nations, what's the best policy. He can judge other nations regarding whether he wants to do trade with them or go to war with them. You see, a king sits on a throne, and he often has to make judgment. This is pointing out that he's a judge at times. And notice, he sorts out all evil with his eyes. With his eyes, he can see what's right and what's wrong and what's best to do and what not to do. He can see what a good person looks like, a good leader, a good country. He can sort them out from those that are bad. So, this is a point about a king who sits on a judgment throne. He sorts out good and evil with his eyes. The word for sorts out here means he can separate it. All right? He examines people, situations, and if he's a righteous king, he will remove evil from his realm. He don't want an evil administrator working with him or for him. He'll remove evil policies. He will not let evil nations threaten his own. He'll protect his nation from evil nations, and maybe even help allied nations, friendly nations, to protect themselves as well. He can team up with them. But learn this. This is really a simple thing. A king discerns evil, gets rid of evil in his kingdom. One of the ways we do that is make sure that when it comes to a government, most of us don't live under a king, especially a king that has authority, a lot of authority. We live under a form of government, whatever form that may be. But a good government would have a just system, a fair system of justice, of law and order, of administration, of treating the people right, of treating other nations right, of setting up good policies for freedom and activity so people can, they can do some of the things we've seen. They can work. They can work the fields. They can benefit from the produce. Now, they may have to pay some taxes, hopefully not very much, but pay their share of taxes to pay for the roads and maybe pay for teachers and pay for leaders' salary and things like that. But people should be able to keep most everything they produce. I don't care how much they make. That's just fair. You want to work harder, make more, you should keep more, right? If you got it to keep. So remember this. Good government gets rid of evil in its government. But you know what? Where does this start? Let's go back to the father beforehand. He's got to be righteous. He's got to walk in integrity. You want the king to walk in integrity, right? You want righteousness in your kingdom? You want a king who makes righteous judgments? So you combine these two things, you have a king who makes righteous judgments, then he's going to get rid of evil as he sorts it out with his eyes. This requires keen discernment by its leaders. Verse 9. This brings up the issue of sin. With all of this, what we've talked about, righteousness and evil, who can say, I have made my heart pure, I am clean from sin? Now this is a question, if you see the question mark at the end, sort of a double question. Who can say, I've made my heart pure, I'm clean from sin? That's what we call a rhetorical question. It's not really supposed to be answered because it's really making a statement. In other words, no one can say this because everyone has sin. Everyone has a sin nature. And that's the point. No one can say they're free from sin. You can't say that. I can't say that. The only person that can say that that's walked this earth is Jesus Christ, because he was free from sin. He never sinned one time. He was perfect. He lived in perfect obedience to God. And yet he was punished for our sins, not his own. But let's understand the point here. It says, the heart pure. I have made my heart pure. The heart is where you do your thinking. It's where your motivations come from, where you reason, where you have your different values, your standards of life. From that comes your speech and then your actions. But we also have, if you study the basics or other passages, you know we have a sinful nature. And that sinful nature wants to control us. That's why we have to give ourselves over to the Spirit. And that sinful nature will mess up our thinking, our motives, and our reasonings if we don't keep it in check. You keep it in check by making sure you choose for what's right and you stay controlled by the Spirit. And that will enable you to maintain a pure heart and be cleansed from sin. Cleansed from sin. Now, not always. That's why we have to confess our sins. That's why we have to be controlled by the Spirit. You have to make sure you constantly do those things and stay right with God. So this verse tells us we all have struggle with sin. Make sure you do what it takes to stay pure. If you sin, confess your sin. If you've done somebody wrong, make it right with them. Okay? It's that simple. Keep yourself pure. Keep in mind we all have the potential to sin. We all have the potential to do wrong. So you keep yourself obedient, controlled by the Spirit to do what's right. That's what we do under the New Covenant. Under the Old Covenant, they had to offer sacrifice. The priest would do that for the nation. Individuals would do it for themselves. Go out and get one of the animals, one that was unblemished, bring it to the temple, and they'd sacrifice it. Well, Christ was our sacrifice. We don't have to do that. But we still have to confess our sins and look to Him as the one being the reason God can forgive us and cleanse us from our sin. Everyone carries within them a sinful nature. Another thing we should learn is that sometimes we need to show compassion, mercy on those who do commit sin. Give them time to learn what they did wrong, to make the correction. Don't be too harsh on them, because remember, you're a sinner too. You sin too, right? We're all stuck with that sin nature till we get out of these bodies. So we all have our weaknesses. Remember this, no one can stand before God right now and say he's pure or blameless, as long as we're in these sinful bodies. And we can't cleanse ourselves. God does that. How does that happen? We have to go to Him, call upon Him to forgive us, confess our sin, and expect Him to forgive us based upon the sacrifice of His Son. And that's how we walk blameless. Until the next time we sin, we confess it again. You see, it's that simple. Well, that'll cover our lesson for today. Let's pray. Oh, Father, we do thank you for your word and the challenges you've given us today. We ask that in the power of your Spirit, we'll take these things and apply them to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.